All right, welcome everyone. Let's go ahead and get into the talk, I suppose. And welcome to the very first self-hosted SharkFest EU. This is not the first SharkFest, and it's not the first SharkFest EU, but it is the very first one hosted by the Wireshark Foundation, which is a nonprofit that we set up for helping out Wireshark and helping out its community. And so the fact that we've been able to host SharkFest ourselves this year has been a really big deal, and that's what I'll be talking about for the first half of the presentation, and then later on we might bring the core developers on stage if they feel like coming up, and then I'll talk about what's coming up with Wireshark itself. So we do have a brand new foundation this year. How did we get here? I would love to say that we had this crystal clear vision from the get-go about how things were going to unfold and that we executed on a plan flawlessly, but that's not the case. That never is. If you've ever undertaken anything significant, you always have to adjust and make a few mistakes here and there. But throughout this process of setting up the foundation, I was reminded of a quote from the physicist Niels Bohr, who said that an expert is a person who has made all the mistakes that can be made in a very narrow field. And if you work in any given field, this should ring true. I mean, this is how you learn stuff. You learn how to make use of your mistakes. If you can limit the damage that the mistakes do, it can actually be kind of beneficial in a lot of ways. But yeah, I've learned over the course of my career to make good use of mistakes. I mean, if you're in a brand new field and just nobody knows how to do anything, then mistakes are how you learn things. You kind of learn by doing, and mistakes can often point in the right direction. And finally, for me personally, I find that mistakes are beneficial because they keep me humble and they keep me centered and keep me from getting too full of myself. And I have made plenty of mistakes in my career. Probably the biggest one was the day that I deleted the website for an American National Football League team. And just to give you a bit of context about how, what the magnitude of the mistake was, I grew up in Kansas City, and the Chiefs are our local football team, and the Chiefs are all anybody ever talks about. Even during baseball season, people talk about the Chiefs. And companies don't have casual Fridays. They have either Red Fridays or Chiefs Fridays, where you get to wear football gear to work. Things like that. Chiefs are really popular in that town. Anyway, I was working at this ISP. We're a very small ISP, but we had a really good sales team, and so we landed accounts like the Chiefs and companies like AT&T and a whole bunch of other places. But one day, I was the sysadmin, and one day our lead developer came up and asked if I could write a script to clean out this directory that was full of cache files, of session files that were accumulating on the server. And I said, yeah, that's a really easy thing to do. If you know shell scripting at all, you just write this. It's like a one-liner that uses the find command and finds files that are older than like 10 days or 2 weeks, and it deletes those files. And I set up a cron job and just went on with my day. And a little while later, somebody came up and said, hey, one of our websites is down. And I checked, and sure enough, it was down. And some of our other websites were missing as well. And some of the people in the audience are kind of going, yeah, I know what you did. What I did was I forgot to give the find command a starting directory. And if you do that, the find command is really helpful in that it just says, it defaults to the home directory of the user running the script. And the home directory of the user running the script, since it was root and it was running on Solaris, was the top level of the file system. And so the script just said, fine, I'm going to find everything on the machine older than 2 weeks and delete those files. That's what you told me to do. And so the machine kind of destroyed itself. And by the time I figured out what was going on, there was just no way to recover. I had to actually restore everything from backup tape. One of the things that I did do correctly was I was very diligent about keeping backups, and I still am today, and this kind of underscored that behavior. Anyway, I spent the rest of the day restoring from backup and got it up and running, so the damage was minimal, let me put it that way. a little while later at a different job, I was asked to set up monitoring at our company's network, and that's an easy thing to do. You especially at that time, you just got some standard software, and everything was done over SNMP, so you just configured it to go do SNMP queries to different devices, and I wanted to see what I could monitor and what I could graph. So I used a tool called SNMP Walk to go just query all of our devices and see what I could get. And I noticed that it wasn't returning everything for some of our devices, and I thought, well, that's silly. I want to know what I can see. So I was a little bit more aggressive about the SNMP Walk, and as it turned out, when I did this to our core routers said, sure, here, have all of, I'm going to give you my entire routing table, and since I'm an internet-connected router running BGP, this is a really big thing. And instead of actually routing packets, I'm going to do this for you. And so, again, a coworker came in and said, hey, there's a problem. The internet's down. And I realized what I had done and stopped the script, and that was a pretty easy fix. Finally, on the list of mistakes that might be weird, but I have that I started an open source project. That wasn't a mistake. That was actually a very good thing, and that's why I'm up here on the stage talking to you today. Also, I say that we bought a house. My wife and I bought a house, and that wasn't a mistake either. It was a great house. We really did love the house. The mistake was that I started an open source project, and it started becoming popular, and people were using it, and then I stopped working on the project and spent all my time fixing plaster and plumbing and painting rooms and things like that. So what I've been doing on the open source project just basically stopped. And that meant at that time that the project itself stopped because we didn't have Git for like our revision control. We had Gerald. People would send me patches via email. I would check them in, I'd apply them to my local source code directory and then make releases. That was our source code control system. And this went on for a long time, a couple of months, that the project just didn't have any activity or movement at all. And finally, one of the developers got hold of me and asked if I was going to work on the project. And I realized that we did have this community, and I did have people depending on me. So that's when I decided to kind of devote my career to supporting this project. And that's what I've been doing for 25 years now. It's kind of worked out pretty well, I would say. So how do we support this project? Well, at that time, it was kind of in the pioneer days for open source, and so you had to do everything yourself. So I bought a server, and I say server in quotes. It was the machine itself, I still have the box. It's absolutely adorable. It was a SparkStation IPX. And I installed a bunch of software, and I needed a place to connect, plug it in and connect it to the internet. So I had a lot of friends that worked at different ISPs around town, so I just traded consulting for hosting. And that worked pretty well for a while, except invariably something would happen that I couldn't do that anymore. Like, I remember one time I got a call from my friend at the ISP who said, oh, we're being acquired, and we're taking inventory tonight of all of our devices, and your box cannot be on that inventory, so you need to come and get it and leave. And so, suddenly we had no connectivity until I found another friend at another ISP who would, host the box again. So, that worked okay, but it got, having to transport this little machine and under the cover of darkness at various points just got old. So, I tried the next thing, which was I asked my boss if I could host the project where I work, and he was very kind, and he said yes. And by that time, we had outgrown the little SparkStation, so I bought a bigger one and put it on the rack at work, and that worked pretty well. And through all this, and throughout the my time leading this project, I've learned that when you manage an open source project, you have to ensure that the project's needs are met. And in our case, our needs fall into these categories. We have to make sure that of course we have users and developers who can do their thing. But we also have to be able to support educators just because of the nature of the product. I mean, you need to know how networking works and how protocols work in order to use Wireshark effectively. We have expenses, and we have trademarks, and we have logos, so we need accountants and attorneys. And you know, the very first thing I learned, of course, that we need is that we need solid infrastructure. And so, you know, this is kind of that's what my day job has been for the past 25 years. But the thing is, you have to know that this doesn't apply equally to all open source projects. For instance, if you have this really small library that processes images somehow, you don't need everything in every category. You probably just need infrastructure and you need to help your developers, and that's it. But on the other hand, if you have a drawing application that uses that library, you know, you're going to need to make sure that more of those categories are met. But in our case, you know, we have, like I said, all these needs. How do we ensure that those needs are met? In particular, how do we ensure that, you know, the developers can do their job? How do we make sure that Wireshark is easy to obtain and install? I mean, something that I focus on from time to time is making sure that, you know, you can go from loading the Wireshark, you know, homepage to having an application running on your screen in as few clicks as possible. And you know, one of those things that we have to do is, you know, what you see over here. This is an example from the digital signatures property for Wireshark on Windows. You can see that, you know, it says the name of the signer is Wireshark Foundation. Just those two little words meant that I had to prove to a certificate authority that I was legally able to act on behalf of this organization, that the organization existed, and I had to give them some money. And I also had to get our attorney to write a professional opinion letter this time around saying that, yeah, you know, this is real, this, you know, is something you should do. You know, it's just keeping Windows from complaining that you're running this executable actually took a lot of effort. Anyway, I'm gonna stop complaining about that now. But we also need to make sure that, you know, the community has access to support and educational resources and things like that. So, you know, back in the early days of the project, making sure that these needs were met, like I said, you had to do everything yourself. You had to set up software in all these different categories, you know, like website hosting and source code management and you know, bug tracking and all this other stuff. And it was a lot of work. And I'm really happy to report that nowadays, it's very little work due to companies like GitHub and GitLab. If you want to set up an open source project, it takes, I mean, if you want to speed run it, it probably takes 45 seconds. I mean, it just takes a very small amount of time. You set up an account, you know, you say, I want to create a new project and give it a name and you're done. You know, they take care of all these things for you. And I can't stress enough how beneficial, you know, companies like GitHub and GitLab are to open source in general, because, you know, since they've come about, we've kind of had this explosion of open source projects, and I do think that's a good thing. And we do use GitLab right now, and you know, a bunch of other people use GitHub, and it's just what you do nowadays. The problem is, you know, even though we have this company that meets, you know, the needs on the previous slide, we have additional needs just because we're a project of a certain size. You know, we need to offer technical support, and GitHub and GitLab kind of don't do that. They kind of do, but they don't do it very well. You know, if you go to GitHub and GitLab, there's a button that says create a new project and create a new pull request or merge request and create a new issue. Those things can be easily automated, and you know, they cost fractions of a penny to do that. But GitHub and GitLab are never, ever going to have a button that says connect me to a lawyer or a graphic designer or something like that. And so, you know, we have to do additional work to make sure that Wireshark's needs are met. And in order to do that, you have to come up with a business model. Just for completeness, you know, I have none up here, but typically, you know, if you are a larger open source project, you will, you know, fall under one of the, you know, bottom three categories. But the thing is that if you do have a small open source project, if you can get away with not having a business model, I thoroughly recommend doing that. It's just a lot less work. It's a lot easier, a lot less headache. But the model we've used for a long time, ever since I asked my boss if we could, you know, host the project at work, is something I call the corporate overlord model, where we have a single company that that just provides everything that the project needs. And it works really well. We've had 4 overlords over the course of the project. The first one was a company called Network Integration Services, and they were our primary sponsor back in the ethereal days. In 2006, that was a really big year for the project because that's, I'd been talking to the people who developed WinPCAP. I don't know if you remember what WinPCAP was, but it was the original packet capture driver that let Ethereal and then Wireshark run under Windows, and it was developed by a couple of people, Loris Dejoani and Gianluca Vereni. And I had been in contact with them in the early 90s, and ultimately I went and started working at Case Technologies, and Case had been founded by Loris and a guy named John Bruno. But when I joined Case, a lot of stuff happened. One of the big things was that we changed the name of the project because NIS held the trademark for Ethereal. We just couldn't get it for for reasons unknown. But yeah, we changed our name to Wireshark. We developed a bunch of products that complemented Wireshark, like AirPCAP, which let you do wireless capture. We also brought on Janice Pampanato, and we brought on Sherry, and they started SharkFest, which is why we are here sitting at SharkFest today. All this stuff happened at Case. So yeah, we were so successful that a couple of years later, a company called Riverbed acquired us because we were doing great. I forget exactly when it happened, but at some point, Loris left, and he went and started an open source project called Sysdig, which lets you do system call analysis on Linux. And it's also, he founded a company with that name as well. In 2021, Loris offered me a job again, and I accepted again, and I went to work at Sysdig. And that's something we'd been talking about for a long time, was setting up a foundation for Wireshark, and that's something that Sysdig really helped out with, and I really appreciate the help that they gave us. So I kept saying that corporate overlords are really great and really nice. What was the problem with them? There are 2 main problems, and they're both single points of failure. The biggest single point of failure was me. I ended up being the project's BDFL. In the open source world, this is a common thing that the lead developer or the creator of the project becomes what we call the benevolent dictator for life. And this initially is useful because it really lets you efficiently grow the project, and it simplifies a lot of things, but over time it becomes a problem because unless you have a really clear succession plan, if something happens to your BDFL, then you're SOL. And I didn't want that to happen to this project, so that was one of the things that we were looking at doing with the foundation. Another problem is that you have a single point of failure with your primary sponsor, because as great as those 4 companies were, and they truly, they really did help the project, if any of them had changed leadership or been acquired or something had happened where they no longer had Wireshark's best interests at heart, that would have been very detrimental to the project. And so, this is a room full of networking people. What do we do when we find a single point of failure? We get rid of it. And so that's what we had been working on, the core, a bunch of core developers and then some other people that are really involved with Wireshark and Sherry and I. We'd been talking about ways to move away from the corporate overlord model and where we should go. And one of the first places we looked was maybe moving to an umbrella organization. And umbrellas kind of take over where GitHub and GitLab leave off. I mentioned earlier that GitHub doesn't have a connect me to a lawyer button, and that's kind of what umbrella organizations provide. They provide all the kind of overhead services and administrative services that you need for a project. It's kind of weird that in order for them to operate on your behalf, they have to own your IP assets, was kind of a weird thing, or something we thought was weird. But the thing is, for a lot of projects, they can be a great choice. And I'm talking about places like the Linux Foundation and the Apache Software Foundation and the Software Freedom Conservancy. All these organizations do really great work And they really do, help open source, to grow and to thrive. But as it turned out, we kind of weren't a very good fit because we already had a strong organization. We have a wonderful conference team and, a wonderful administrative team. And so, when we were looking at these various umbrella organizations, we found out that, okay, there's some overlap here, and we would have to give up some things that we didn't really want to give up. So that kind of takes us to our final choice here. It brings me to another quote, which is that Americans can always be counted on to do the right thing after they've exhausted all other possibilities. This is attributed to Winston Churchill. As far as anybody can tell, he never said this, but even though it's a fictional quote, I still love it, and it's kind of true. So, we're kind of down to our last choice here, set up an independent non-for-profit. And that's exactly what we did. We, with the help of a bunch of people, including SysDig and a nonprofit attorney that we found, we are now incorporated in the state of California as a public benefit corporation. That's a specific category that we fall into. At the federal level, we've also been granted nonprofit status under Section 501c3 of the tax code. If you're from the US, you probably see this all the time. I don't know if how familiar it is here in the EU. But what those letters and numbers basically mean is that we have agreed to comply with this pretty strict set of rules, and in return, the IRS has granted us nonprofit status. And at least in the U.S., any donations that people make to us, are tax deductible, and there are various benefits like that. The text you see here at the bottom of the slide is the top of the acceptance letter that we received from the IRS. I remember receiving that letter that day. My wife handed it to me, and I was sat down and I was reading through it, and I got very emotional. This was a big milestone for the project, and it was something we'd been working on literally for years, and I finally had tangible physical proof in my hand that we now existed as a nonprofit, and I'm still kind of emotional about it. Sorry. So we now have a foundation. We have to do stuff. We have to have a mission, and we have to execute that mission. So what do? Our goal is to help as many people as possible understand their networks as much as possible, and we do that through things like offering open source software and supporting that. We do that through conferences and a bunch of other initiatives. So what does this give us? As a project, this gives us more sustainable sources for funding, and it gives us more sustainable governance. It gets rid of those single points of failure I was talking about. And it gives us more access to being able to partner with educators and do things like training and certification and a bunch of other stuff. And this is something we're working on right now, and hopefully we'll have more stuff to announce over the coming months and years. And this is, I think the work that we do is important, and I'm really happy and proud to be part of this, but I can't wait to see how we do grow our community over time. We are also a bunch of people. There are a bunch of people that make up the foundation. Sherry is our fearless leader. Angelo Spampanato, who couldn't be here today, he is our technical director. I'm on the board as our chief financial officer, but Janice is also on our board, as well as Lori Stejuani and Hansang Bei, who for a long time has been a prominent member of the community. So this is the point in the talk where I reveal that I'm a terrible salesperson, because it took me a good 26 minutes to get to the money slide. But you can help the foundation, and this is how you can help. We always appreciate individual donations and contributions, but something I've learned as my new job as CFO is that it really does help us with budgeting and with projections if people will set up recurring contributions, because then we can have assurances that we're going to have continuing revenue come in and plan for that. However, the very best thing you can do is get somebody else to donate, somebody else with a lot of money, for instance, your employer. If you think your employer might be interested in either making a donation or becoming a member of the foundation, then please do get in touch with either Sherry or me, and we'll be we'll be happy to help. Anything else you want to add, Sherry? All right. I'll assume that I'm doing a good job then, whether that's true or not. All right, that's all I had on the foundation. If you have any questions about the foundation, don't hesitate to ask. We will answer as best we can. But this is the point in the talk where we kind of bring up the core developers. So. All right. It's not going to work. Here you go. Oh, no, we have 3 microphones, which means we have ambiguity as to... Left and right. Yes, I don't our tokenry has 3 tokens.
I'm Anders Broman. I've worked in the telecom industry and done a lot of dissectors in that area. And I'm also looking into contributions code. Verifying the code.
Pascal from France. I started contributing in 2008, as far as I can remember. Became a core developer in 2012 because those guys were pissed off just managing my stuff. And I've been enjoying contributing and reviewing and discussing with all you guys since.
Hi there, I'm Peter from the Netherlands. I've been contributing to Wireshark for 10 years. Interested in TLS, DNS, HP, lots of stuff, security. Currently I work for Cloudflare.
Uli, I'm also contributing from the more the routing protocol area and taking care of issues, doing some housekeeping.
Hi, I'm Graham Blois from the UK, long time associated with the Wireshark project. I've done a few presentations at SharkFest, and I haven't done much code lately, but I've been always hanging around on Ask. I like formatting the questions nicely and correcting spelling errors, because it just bugs my OCD. And I love the team we have here, and I love meeting everybody and talking about network issues that are way above my head, because I'm just a SCADA engineer, so I just do little tiny bits on those things.
Hello, my name is Jaap. I'm also from the Netherlands. I've been working on Wireshark since 2004. I was working in the telecom industry, and we're looking for test tooling there. So that was the early days of VoIP development. So we introduced the RTP, the initial version of the RTP sector, and other stuff like that. Been fixing bugs which have been raised by you guys, or reviewing code contributions by you guys, and been going through all this stuff as well.
Hello, I'm Stig from Norway. I've been a core developer for 15 years. I have a lot of ideas here and there. Some of them are working, some of them are not. But I've contributed to, I think, almost all parts of Wireshark. I'm currently working with cellular IoT. So my task there is to help our customers to understand, same as the Wireshark goal, what is happening on the cellular device. Everything from connecting to the LTE network, seeing nearby cells, the attached procedures, all the IP packets flowing, also control packets going between application core, modem core, etc. So we are trying to give the right tool to our customers to see what's happening, which I think is the important thing when you're implementing IoT applications.
Hello. You already know me, Roland Knall. I've also been around for about 10 years contributing code, mostly focused in the past on the UI parts, XCAP parts, stuff like that, and industrial automation. Nowadays, more focused on the PR side of our project. The SharkBites podcast, for instance, I host. If you haven't listened to it, do. It's quite interesting, quite a broad range of topics. Yeah, and just general interest in UI stuff and all those.
Well, last and maybe least, I'm Sanko Lok. You know me from maybe pre-conference classes or presentations or challenges that I create for SharkFest. I started using Ethereal back in 1999, I guess, something like that. And then I started missing features, and so I started like, hey, can I do something with that? And it's open source, so I contributed some code. Got annoyed to people though, because it was still by email, and I needed the Windows build, automated build for working with it, because I developed on Linux. So I was nagging like, please add my change, and then they allowed me to be a core developer. So that happened in 2007. SharkFest happened, and then I started working for myself because this community is really great, and I wanted to just do troubleshooting and training, and well, so that's what happened.
Does anybody have any questions, comments? If you don't speak up, this is going to be a really short talk.
How many core developers are all around the world? So what's the percentage of core developers we are looking at?
At any given time, we probably have, 20 or 30 active core developers. As far as people who have been granted core developer access, the total, we're probably up around 60 or 70, but I mean, people become active and then they kind of drop off over time, and it's just I guess the natural order of a project like this.
Gerald?
Yes.
I have a question.
We're waiting.
So shouldn't we all, when we watch those podcasts or listen to those podcasts, if we watch it on YouTube, we should like it and share it, and then when we listen on iTunes, we should comment on how awesome it is and give it a 5-star? Should we do that?
Oh yes, please.
Can you, our podcasts are different because we're different.
Yes.
We're special.
To say the least, our podcasts are very different. It goes more into the direction of talking about network analysis. That was the original idea, of being more engaging with the community. But we also touched on things. One of the most important themes we have in our podcast, for instance, is Women in Wireshark, by the way, founded or at least created as an idea by Betty. That has been an important part of it. Also talking to core figures in the industry to get their point of view on things which range from a variety of topics, between Radia Perlman saying about how she came up with STP to going to beyond people talking about AI. So there is a broad range, and I have to say I'm a little bit proud about the fact that we are just running about 1 year and we have about 300 people retaining viewership, which for a podcast this niche and this small is actually quite impressive. If you want to be on the podcast, be my guest. I'm always looking for topics, I'm always looking for ideas what we can cover. If you say, okay, this is something interesting we want to hear about. This week we're gonna do a few recordings with people from the industry, and Naomi, obviously. The women in Wireshark have the privilege to be hosted on an episode, but it's always very enjoyable and very much look forward to that. That being said, and Betty kicking it off, I want to give a shout out to someone else or to somebody else, because this conference, as much as it is about the users and the developers, wouldn't be possible about all the speakers who volunteer their time. No one here gets paid for speaking at the conference. So all the speakers who volunteer their time to come here to listen to the talks themselves, which is actually quite rare for technological conferences, but also present topics interesting and do an engaging talk and be present during the day. So I want just to give a short shout out to all the speakers being here, and thank you very much from us that you volunteer your time.
So who is the winner this year for the Women in Tech?
We already pointed her out. Yeah. You wanna just take a bow once more? Yeah, no, don't worry. I have to say that what winners and women in Wireshark Tech winners goes, we always luck out. Those are always really great women to talk to and engage with, and it has been really a privilege to host them and be part of SharkFest. Any further questions?
Okay.
Please come by the developer then to talk to us.
Yeah.
If we look busy, we are not.
No.
That would be that would be the usual thing to say. We can be bribed with chocolate and stuff, but no, we're actually just quite happy to talk to you. Yeah. By the way, also go by the first timers booth if you haven't. Even if you don't want to have a mark. Any questions you have, you might feel not appropriate for the developer stand, there are none. But if you feel like that, Betty and the people manning that booth are very happy to.
It's your first time, so everyone's nice to you.
Yeah. Because we haven't shown that, but we are horrible persons. Yes. And one last thing, as there are no questions. If you have any recommendations for the program outside of SharkFest, if you have any questions about the program, if you have any issues with the program, please don't feel threatened by the Wireshark GitLab issues form. It's very easy to fill out, it doesn't hurt. It's we are usually always replying quite fast. And you will at least get an acknowledgement, okay, this is an issue that we're interested in, or this is something we are not interested in. Take note, we are an open source community. None of us, except Gerald, is getting paid for working on Wireshark. This is our hobby project. So some issues might take more time to solve or might take more pickup by developers, but we're trying to get around it.
And one addition, when you open an issue regarding a protocol issue or something like that, please provide a capture file. This really helps.
And if you do, depending on the capture file, if you're concerned about scrubbing it, you might want to talk to Jasper. He has a great tool for removing confidential information. So yeah, we can handle that as well.
And you can also mark it as private, so it's only seen by the core developers, if you don't want to have it public.
So since you're all here, feel free to just ask a question. There's no stupid questions, and if you ask them now, very often it happens that after presentation, people come to speak, which is all great, and then start asking questions. But if you do that during the presentation, then the rest of you will all benefit from this. And also, after every, I think Cheryl might talk about it, but after every presentation, please consider leaving feedback. Was it useful for you? Was it too hard or too easy? What could be improved? That would help making the presentation better in the future.
One more?
So on the GitLab, it's not just for bug reporting. It's also for enhancement requests. So gosh, I wish Wireshark did blah blah blah. Don't tell me, okay? Because it's not really feel like doing it, but the goal is so that goes as an enhancement request. It's done the same way a bug is done. It has its own little templates. Screenshots of how you'd like it to look are awesome, and it might go through. Some do.
That's a very good point from Betty. If you have any feature requests, you can also file them in GitLab. We can't read everyone's minds, especially if you're behind the keyboard on the other side of the world. So please, explain what you were trying to do, what you tried, what ideally you would like to do. We are developers, also users of Wireshark. So if something annoys us enough, and someone like Zach, Wireshark doesn't exactly do what he wanted, so he started improving it, and most of us started that way. But we don't know all your use cases, all your scenarios, how you like to work, and so on. So if there's anything that can be improved, please describe how you work and what you'd like to see.
The saying goes, we fix stuff that annoys us, so if you annoy us, we fix stuff that annoys you.
Questions?
Anyone else? All right.
Yeah.
How is feedback done for all the sessions?
Do we have a feedback form already in place? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Okay. There should be a link provided to the feedback form, I think on the session table outside. I'm looking at Sherry and hope she's nodding or...
In the Discord server, in the general channel. It's already in the Discord server, in the general channel. There is the link to it.
All right. All right, I'm going to talk about the state of Wireshark itself, the application, and then that will conclude the talk. This is the slide everybody wants to see. These are our vital stats. As you can see, we get over 1 million downloads a month, and that count is just on the servers that we manage, meaning that anything in Wireshark.org. And that covers our Windows and Mac OS installers. I have really no idea how many people use or download Wireshark on Linux, just because I don't have visibility into the packaging repositories for different distributions, and that's fine. But of the downloads that we manage, most of them are for Windows, and quite a few are for Mac OS, and this actually matches kind of the larger OS market share around the world, which kind of makes sense. In the upcoming Wireshark 4.2.0 release, we're going to support over 2,900 protocols and 250,000 display filter fields. So each time I show this slide, those numbers keep growing, and that's this kind of continues that trend. The number I love on this slide, probably most of all, is the fact that we've gotten contributions from over 2,200 authors. I love being part of a project that people like to contribute to. It's just very energizing, and I love working with all these people. Finally, depending on how you count our code, whether you count code that's automatically generated, we have somewhere between 3.5 and 6 million lines of code. And that's pretty good sized project, and it is it's actually quite a bit of code to manage. Anyway, as I mentioned, we have a major release coming up on November 15th, at least if everything goes to plan. We're going to release Wireshark 4.2.0. Right now, if you go to wireshark.org, you can download release candidate 3, and it should be very similar to what we end up shipping. And I encourage you to download it and test it out, especially if you can do that over the next couple of days, because if you find any issues, we certainly want to hear about them, and we'll try to get them fixed. But probably the big visible change in Wireshark 4.2.0 is going to be better dark mode support on Windows. I don't know how many people here, a lot of you are running Windows. I don't know how many are running dark mode, but we're going to support that a lot better. And there are a bunch of other improvements in the application itself, like a couple of people have made improvements to how fast we can sort packets and things like that. There are display filter improvements. There have been a lot of display filter improvements over the last few major releases, and that trend is continuing. One of the things that hopefully people will find useful is that, and it's shown in the screenshot here, is that we're adding a tool that lets you launch an application with the SSL keylog environment variable set to whatever Wireshark is going to try to read. And that will hopefully make it easier to decrypt TLS and SSL traffic. But this is a brand new feature, and so if there are any improvements that could be made, we certainly want to hear about them. And there are all sorts of other changes, and those are all listed in the release notes, so I encourage you to check out the release notes and just get a good idea of what's going on. Finally, we're adding installer packages, official installer packages for Windows on ARM64. And, and at least one of the, well, okay, I see a couple of MacBooks here. If you run a Windows VM on newer Apple hardware, this is kind of a big deal because you're going to be running on ARM. And running the Intel executable is, for at least capturing packets, it's problematic because of the way MPCAP works and is not able to work on that platform. But as far as how applicable this is to the larger Windows community, I do know that there's ARM hardware out there for Windows, and Windows does support it. And I have a feeling that market share is going to grow over time. And I won't pretend to have any insider knowledge at Microsoft, but I can tell you that along with us, independent of us doing this porting effort, I keep getting emails from people at Microsoft asking when we're going to do this. So, so I do know there's interest at Microsoft in this happening, and there was a lot of relief, I think, on their end that when I told them that we're going to ship packages soon. So we do have this up and running, and I'm interested to see how this kind of plays out.
Do you have any stats on how many people have downloaded this on the release candidate?
Dozens. It's the last time I looked, it was kind of in the low hundreds, but there are people downloading it, and that's to be expected, just because we don't. This isn't part of the official release yet, so you kind of have to go looking for it. You have to know it's there. But once we do, get this out and released, then hopefully that usage will pick up. Any general questions about the next release or the project in general? All right. I will also say that we are 25 years old now. We turned 25 on July 14th. That was when I made the very first public release of Ethereal, back in 1998. What does it mean for you here today? Might mean that we have cake at some point. We'll see. But finally, I'm sure some people are getting tired of this, but I always finish up with this slide. And I wanted to say thank you. And the reason I have this picture here is because when I'm not developing Wireshark, I like to ride my road bike. And where I live in the summertime, if you ride a road bike, it means you're out in the countryside under some pretty brutal sunlight and pretty brutal heat. And so when I go out riding in the, amongst the orchards and ranches and farms, I see scenes like this. I'll be riding along, just dehydrating myself and destroying my body, and I'll see little farm animals resting in the shade. And if you take those two facts, you can pretty definitively conclude that I'm dumber than livestock. And I say this just to make it clear that Wireshark is a great and wonderful thing, and it's not because of me, it's because of all of you. It's because of our developer community and our educator community and our user community. And this has been just kind of this has had such a positive effect on my life, and I cannot thank you enough for all that you do for the project. So thank you.